step is to make photocopies of your artwork. Next, for this project, my mini journal, I cut a piece for the cover and then scraps of paper for the inside. My finished journal is about 5 by 5, or about 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. And then I decided which was my cover, insert my pages, figure out how I'm going to sew it. Next, I had already inked up some tags with some of the ink that was left over from my painting. So I decided on a tag that I would use for the cover, one that would contrast a little bit with the cover, and then I folded it in half, and I decided to stamp on it with a rubber stamp. The rubber stamp that I used is a stamp designed by Samantha Kara Harding, and it reads "fly" is the word. It's a cling stamp, so I put it on an acrylic block and inked it and stamped it on the tag. Her stamps are available at Paper Bag Studios. So once I stamped it, I did it on a scrap paper, decided I actually wanted to stamp it directly on the tag. And then after I stamped it, I made sure it was dry, and then I used a black pen to kind of doodle around the edges. And while it was drying, I just threaded my needle before I got ready to sew. So I just went ahead and inked up the edges of the tag and then just doodled around the word, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Now I decided for this particular book that I was going to sew the tag onto the cover. And I just did that with some olive colored thread, just a straight zigzaggy or a straight back and forth stitch to hold it in place. Plus it adds a little bit of texture to it. So I fold the pages, add them to the inside. I use these big paper clips from Office Depot, kind of holds it in place a little bit. And then I just do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch with some waxed bookbinding thread. And once I'm finished with the stitching, I just kind of tie it off into a double or triple knot, whichever is your preference. And then I decided to use my pen again to doodle around the edges. You could stitch around the edges as well if you wanted to do that. So this is a quick and easy way to use some of your artwork to create a new project. The next project is a journal page. I added some water to my base page and then some Golden's acrylic paint. I mixed with a little bit of water to create my background. And some tumble tie-dye spray ink as well. I sometimes dab it off a little bit with a piece of muslin. And then I just decided to go through some of my photocopies to decide what pieces I might like to use while my page was drying a little bit. When I add water to the page, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to dry. You could also heat set it if you wanted to do that. So I just went through my photocopies, cut different images of some things I thought maybe I might want to use. Sometimes I don't know what I'm going to use, so I just cut a bunch of pieces and I kind of move them around a little bit. I thought these looked a little like houses. I'm not sure if I'll use them, but at least I have them in front of me, and that kind of inspires me. And then just some newspaper that had been inked up. I grabbed some pieces of that as well. Now, once my page is dry, I start deciding what I'm going to do. I go ahead and put some of the needlepoint, the plastic needlepoint canvas on the page and just use some spray ink, some tumble dye spray inks, as well as some Adirondack spray inks. And then I used a large circle stencil with some punchinella to create not only circles, but circles within circles. And I used Adirondack spray ink, and that was the lettuce. All those stencils are available in the Art Goods shop, as well as the inks. So I'm just looking at this, trying to decide what do I want to do next. I decided to just grab one of the tags to use it as a scraper and I took some of the acrylic paint that was still on my scrap paper and just added some spots around the page with the acrylic ink. Now I went ahead and took some blank tags and just kind of smushed them into the ink so as not to waste it. Dina Wakely actually does this with a lot of her inks, and I think it's a great idea. So I'm starting to do it as well, because now I've got pieces of tags and various things that I can use for later projects. So once your paper is dry, your page is dry, this is where I'm moving on to the next step, trying to decide what elements I might want to put on the page at this point. Now, I had cut some things out, so I will probably consider those and also look in my paper stash to see if there's anything else I might want to use. You just want to make sure that the page is dry, depending on what your next step is, whether you want inks to run together or not run together, and whether or not you're going to do any writing maybe on the bottom layer. You want to make sure that you have a dry page. So for the next step, I decided to cut some circles from the newspaper, the inky newspaper that I had in my stash. So I cut some circles. I thought those would play nicely off of the punchinella and the stencil circles, as well as the ones we did with the plastic needlepoint canvases. So I go back to my color copies of my painting, and I decided to cut some other circles out from some different spots within the page, or the photocopies, that kind of matched or complemented the base of my journal page at this point. And then I'll just kind of look at it. I'll lay them down a little bit, kind of decide what I want to do. And at this point, I decided that I wanted to enhance the circles that were on the page with some black paint. The black paint in the cup is just watered down black acrylic paint. I actually was using it for the painting for some splatter, and I had it left over. It hadn't dried yet because I had mixed it with so much water. And so now at this point, I'll probably decide, how I want to lay things down. And I decided to go ahead and place the circles down and kind of fiddle with them a little bit and see where I liked them and where I wanted to place them. And then I just used a Yoo-hoo glue stick to adhere them to my page. I like Yoo-hoo glue sticks. That's just happens to be the glue stick that I like to use. I live in Florida, so it's pretty humid here, and it tends to work pretty good, at least for us here. Okay, next I'm going to grab another paintbrush. This one's going to be a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner brush. And I'm going to just do the same thing, black paint around the circles, just to enhance them a little bit. And then I just take a look at my page and decide, where do I want to put something else? What does it need? And I'm looking at this now thinking that I need to do something with the green circles where the punchinello is. And I was considering maybe putting another color on there and opted not to. So I decided to take the whiteout pen and color in some of the green with white, some white circles. I didn't do them all, I just did some of them. I think it makes them stand out a little bit more. And so I just fill in some of the circles with the whiteout pen. Placing a few more pieces from my painting on the page to see if there's anything else I want to add to it. And ultimately, I decided to just stick with the circles that I had cut out and not use any of the other elements. I decided at this point to add in some doodling with my black pen around the whiteout circles, and that makes them stand out even more. Next, I decided to add some journaling. And I used the whiteout pen in one of the blocked off spots I used where I did the acrylic, where I scraped the acrylic paint on. Now, once I wrote this, I realized maybe black might have looked nice, maybe nicer, but I kind of liked it, but decided that it needed some more. So rather than writing over it horizontally, I decided to turn the page and write some more journaling in the other direction, going the vertical. And I did write a little over the white. I like the way that looks. And then that pretty much finished up my page. For my greeting card and envelope, I just folded some white cardstock and grabbed, really literally just grabbed a scrap from the pile from my art painting and adhered it to the corner, left corner with glue stick. And then I decided to stitch around it to adhere it to the card front, and mostly to give it some texture and make it really just that much messier, really. And so once I'm finished sewing that, I clip off a few of the strings, and I realized that for some, maybe the stitched area on the inside of the cover of the card might not look too appealing. So I took some ledger paper and I just glued down the ledger paper. I did not glue the paper because it's so fragile that it would tear. I glued the glue right onto the card. Next, I decided to go ahead and let that dry and go to the envelope. So I did take a piece of scrap from my painting and I glued it to the envelope. And while that's drying, I go back to the rubber stamps. Again, this is also a Samantha Kira Harding stamp, and you can get that at Paperback Studios. And using an acrylic block, I stamp on that. And then go back to the envelope. Now I'm just going to outline the image with a black pen just to enhance it a little bit. Now I go back to my card and I'm trying to decide, do I doodle around the word or do I try something different? And I decided to add some color. So I squeezed a little bit of acrylic paint, green gold, one of my favorites, golden's color, onto my acrylic block. And then I added a little water to it. And I'm still at this point not 100% sure what I'm going to do. So I think I'm going to go ahead and paint over the word, but I'm going to test it first on another one just to make sure. And I liked it. So now I'm going to paint it. And I like it because I took the brush and kind of went with a sweeping motion up. And I kind of think that enhances the word. Added some strokes to the envelope. And all finished.